And because I didn't have that strong relationship with myself, and I had been giving my power away subconsciously for so long, I knew I had to spend some time with myself to do some deep self-reflecting. I cannot be moved by the things of this world. None of this stuff matters. The relationship that I have been intentionally building and rebuilding with myself, and getting the closest that I've ever been to God, it has shown me that the true value comes from within, and that's what shapes the world around you. It sounds cliche, but I never really grasped the importance and the depth behind that philosophy, and God has been consistently sending me lessons to see if I really get the memo. Lately, anything that's not in alignment with who I really am has naturally been falling apart. Great day, gorgeous, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Vaz, and I originally started this channel to document my journey in healing, self-discovery, self-love, self-care. It was just a lot of self, and you can see that in the beginning of my video. But after a while of experiencing so many ups and downs, and going through the highs and the lows, and searching for a peace that just will always end up being temporary, I realized that I was spiraling. Now I realized that I was trying to fill a void that only God could fill. And I was searching for him in everything and in everyone, and not realizing that I had completely abandoned him in the process. But God has a funny way of tugging at your heart and allowing you to go through certain things in result of your disobedience. And a lot of times we like to blame God for these things that happen in the process, but he's really on the other side giving us grace and time to come back into his presence and to put our focus back on him and not the things that he created, not our own perception of him, not the idea of who he is or other people's idea or made up definition of who he is, not religion and performance, not things that are only surface level and God-like, but God himself, his true nature, his true character, his heart, and the truth of his word. I've always believed in God, but I never truly knew him for myself, because in reality, how can you consistently break the heart of someone who you claim to truly love? And I grew up in the church. It was never really consistent, but I don't think many people from the church really knew him either. I had a lot of questions that no one truly seemed to be able to answer, and it seemed like asking questions in the church was forbidden. So most of the people who claimed to be holier than thou were some of the most wicked and hypocritical, judgmental people that I have ever knew. And I've been hit on by married pastors, watched people at the church go into full character mode at church and then turn around and live a life that's completely different outside of church. And it led me to think that Christianity was a joke based on the performance of the church people. I questioned everything about Jesus, and I just always wondered how God could be so holy and sovereign, but rule so many people who reflect the exact opposite of what he was supposed to stand for. And I just had so many questions. So subconsciously, I went out and on my own journey, I went to search for God. And that disconnect paired with unhealed trauma, a lack of true identity, that all created a space and opened doors for the enemy to plant seeds for self-destruction and to pull me further and further away from God when what I truly desired was to be close to him. So I'm a lost sheep at this point, and I'm on this journey searching for God, but my back is turned to his son. And that just left so many doors open for deception from the enemy. But what the enemy meant for bad, God ended up turning it all around for my good. I ran away from God because I never truly knew him. I knew religion, and it's a complete difference. So I idolized the people of the church because they were supposed to represent him. And I thought that they were the bridge to my relationship with him. And they were supposed to point me in the right direction. But some of the things that I witnessed never sat well with my spirit. And my faith was with man. It was in man. And when you put your faith and expectations in creation, you will always be disappointed every time. So when I ran away from God, I ended up running into the arms of everything that I felt would fill that God-sized void in my heart. Toxic relationships, status, money, drinking, different drugs, whatever gave me a temporary high and numbed my pain for a little while. I made those things my God, but it never lasted because the flesh is never satisfied. And I noticed that every time I gave myself away to these gods that I had created, I would lose pieces of myself in exchange for whatever feeling it was that I was searching for. So now I'm on this journey to reclaim the pieces of me that I lost when I gave myself away to these idols that I put in God's place. And the problem was that I thought that I could do this with my own strength. There was so much pain that I tried to let go of, but it lingered with me no matter how much I tried to work through it and heal from it. I just struggled with forgiving people who hurt me. I struggled with forgiving myself, and the fact that I allowed myself to go through certain things. And I also struggled with silencing this voice in my head that seemed to just always be working against me and not for me. And it just always seemed like that voice would just win. There was no real fruit in the healing that I claimed to be receiving. My healing process started to become a security blanket for me. And I like to think that my healing was in my head and not in my heart, because I was holding on to so much resentment, and it felt like I was forcing myself to let go of things that just felt impossible to do on my own, and things that my mind just couldn't seem to comprehend. So I felt like if the burdens that I was carrying didn't get lifted from me, then I would literally lose my mind. But I had taken on this identity of being this self-empowered, divine feminine, and so caught up in the deception of this new age ideology that not being able to carry those burdens on my own, it made me feel like I was weak. And that's a trauma to unpack on another day. So at this point, I'm praying and I'm praying, but it just felt like my prayers were going unanswered. And I love trying to attach God's approval to my sin. I only wanted to claim a God that would tolerate life my way, because I wanted to be the author of my life. I wanted to be in full control. I wanted my will, my way. And I thought that as long as I was doing right in my own eyes, and that my heart was in the right place in my own eyes, that God was with me in everything that I did. But it don't work that way. So I had been claiming God's blessings for my foolishness. I'm deep in my sin. I'm loving my sin. And at the same time, thinking that God was answering my prayers. But in reality, the enemy was rewarding me for representing his kingdom and bribing me with my desires to keep me bound. Everything that I received outside of God's will was fleeting. It never lasted. It was never created to, because only God himself can fill that void, and anything else outside of that is the counterfeit. So I was just always on this roller coaster, always seeking the next form of satisfaction, the next doorway to unlock peace, another method of healing. But you just will never be satisfied in your sin. No matter how good it feels in the moment, you will always be missing something. And that something is God. Somehow, the more I tried to run away from God and create my own version of him, the more I would feel him tugging at my heart. And even though I never had that personal relationship with him, I still felt his presence through conviction in my heart. And it's something that's hard to explain, but something that I can't deny. We're all God's creation, but we are not all his children. God says, my sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. And he was always there for me with his hand out, waiting for me to grab it. And the more he reached out for me, the more I denied him. I would feel his presence and hear his whispers throughout various moments of me being deep in my mess. And he would try to warn me about certain decisions that I was making and try to protect me from what would be ahead of me. And I still chose my own way, because we have free will. And as long as I loved my sin more than I desired correction, the longer I stayed in bondage. So it was my decision for me being where I was. But sin blinds you because it separates you from God. And God loves us so much that he gives us that free will to do as we please. And he chooses us even when we don't choose him. But I got to a place last year where it just became harder and harder to run from him. So the Bible talks about how God will send someone to plant a seed. Then another will come along to water it, and how God himself will be the one to make it grow. And that's exactly what happened for me. Every single idol that I had made and everything that was keeping me from God, he started to dismantle and strip away everything from me one by one. And as God was stripping away the things in my life that were taking his place, he was sending his children to plant seeds, then more to water those seeds. And the more that I loosened my grip on the people, the places, and the things that I had put before him, the more my heart became open to receive him. And it felt like my life was falling apart in the process, because God literally came through with a bulldozer to clear the way for him to make his entrance into my heart. And he just allowed those seeds to grow. Like, he had to break me down to my weakest to open my eyes to see that I need him. Because as long as I had my idols, I didn't think that I needed him, because I allowed those things to take his place. And anything that I relied on outside of him failed me. He couldn't get my attention while I was consumed by the things that gave me temporary satisfaction, because I gave those things his rightful position and there was no space for him. And God will not ride in the passenger seat. He just gonna get straight up out the car. Running away from God is like running away from home when you think you want to be grown and disobey your parents because you think what's out there in the world has your best interest in heart, over your parents, who's really just trying to protect you from the very things that your flesh is drawing you to. And then you go out into the world and you experience all of these things and you still feel empty inside. And then once the world chews you up and spits you out, you go running back home and your parents still accept you with open arms. But you still have to deal with the consequences of the decisions that you made while you were being disobedient. But this time you have covering. And you can't blame your parents for the things that you've experienced from being out there in the world when all they tried to do was protect you and warn you. And in the end, your parents are still there to help you to get back on track because they love you that much and they don't want to see you fail. Jesus loves us that much. He gives us instruction to protect us. But we're so misguided to think that freedom is in creating our own path outside of God's will, but anything absent from God will not stand. I was searching for Jesus all this time without knowing it. And I think a lot of us are essentially. The way that I was encountered by him was in the most supernatural, loving way. And God is so intentional. And if you've been around since my old videos, you'll know that I've always been a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And God has just been having fun with proving that and showing me that even when I ran from him, he's always had his hand in my life. And I'll share my full testimony in detail once I'm led by God to do so. But he has changed me in ways that nothing or no one ever could. And he's still working on me. But he picked me up in my mess and put me back together. He has changed my heart, renewed my mind, and he's correcting me with love. And I just have never felt so full and whole in my life. I'm not perfect and my life is not perfect, but doing life with Christ is just, it's giving me a level of safety and security and a peace that surpasses all understanding, because I still can't wrap my head around it. And running into his arms, my soul just immediately felt at home. And this is the feeling that I've been searching for my whole life. And he's the only one who could ever give it to me. So much has changed in the last 9 months, and I can't fit everything into this one video. So there's so much that I look forward to sharing on this platform to edify God's kingdom. I just want my life and everything that I do to glorify the one who saved me and to help as many of God's children in the process. So if you're new here and you're up to sticking around for the journey, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. And if you're part of my Day One tribe, I'm so excited to be back. And thank you so much for sticking around. Feel free to chat with me in the comments. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.